A few years ago, we grew and sold a business that forever changed our lives. At first, we really struggled trying to figure out which tools to use to help run and organize our community. But that all changed once we discovered Kajabi. Kajabi is the ultimate all-in-one platform that helps creators and entrepreneurs build successful online businesses by unlocking predictable, recurring revenue. No matter your niche, Kajabi makes it easy to turn your skills, passions, and experiences into enriching online courses, exclusive membership sites, subscription podcasts, thriving communities, personalized coaching, and more. The best part, Kajabi doesn't take a cut of your revenue because everything is owned and controlled by you, so you keep 100% of what you earn. And with Kajabi, you also get robust analytics, easy payment options, email marketing tools, and customizable website templates, all built in. You don't need a huge audience to make sustainable income. There are thousands of creators on Kajabi making 6 and 7 figures with less than 50,000 followers. Right now, Kajabi is offering a free 30-day trial to start your business if you go to kajabi.com/MU. That's KAJABI.com/MU. Go to kajabi.com/MU and join the creators and entrepreneurs who have made over $7 billion.
So I've always had the belief of just bootstrap the crap out of it. Even if you have the money, bootstrap it, because money makes things easier, but it doesn't always make things better.
Hey, welcome back to Millionaire University. It's Eric Fisher. In this episode, we are bringing you a great conversation with Brigham Dallas. He's going to share his entrepreneurial journey and the lessons he's learned while scaling Hello Sugar to an amazing 89 franchise units. We're going to talk about employee retention and strategies, the impact of company culture, the advantages of technology like AI as he's implemented it. He also shares the critical role that leadership and financial management and the art of selecting the right partnerships have when it comes to creating a workplace where everybody thrives. So give it up for Brigham Dallas.
I was always wanting to be an entrepreneur. Ever since I was a kid, that was like one of the most important things in my life. When I was 20-ish, I dropped out of college. I moved to Thailand and I lived in a bungalow. And the bungalow beside me was this guy that did Google search, like organic search. And I just learned from him. There's nothing to do on islands. Like you think, oh, it's so pretty, you're at a beach. You're not like, let's go to the beach. You live at a beach, right? So like all day long, I was learning from this guy. And I decided to start a online pay-per-click company. So like advertising on Google and Meta. And I just was around a lot of entrepreneurs because of that. And at one point I was just like, you know what? I want to do this for myself. And at that point, I met this girl. I'm like 26 at the time, so we're fast forwarding a lot. Met this girl who she was complaining about how much she had to pay in taxes. She's like, yeah, I had to pay like $20,000 in taxes. And I'm like, what the heck? Like, that's crazy. Who does that? Like, that's so much money, right? And so I started thinking about it, like, what do you do? And she's like, man, I do waxing. And I'm like, waxing? That sounds like you don't make a lot on that. And she's like, no, like I make like $50 a Brazilian and I can do 4 Brazilians an hour. I'm like, holy crap, you make $200 an hour. Like, how much are your costs? And she's like, oh, it's like $4 for a wax. Wow. Like you make more than a lawyer does. Like, how do you find your clients? And she's like, all my clients are found through Groupon. And I'm like, well, how do you get them to come back? And she's like, well, with waxing, people come back every month. And I'm like, this sounds like the most amazing business. Like, I want to be part of that. And so I flew her down from Utah and she flew to Arizona and she trained my first esthetician. And that's how we started. I knew nothing about waxing. I built a website in like a month. I just like speed of play got started as fast as humanly possible.
Insane. So now Hello Sugar's become this chain of salons, basically. You got it started then. I'm curious, somebody's like, well, yay, great for you, Brigham. You stumbled onto something. I don't know that you slowly rolled it out. People have very curious questions here. They're like, okay, I get it. You jumped into it, you scaled it, but like, there's probably been a lot of obstacles along the way.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of failures and obstacles. I mean, the first 5 years, I really didn't have incentives right. That was a lot of like how I could grow. And so the first 5 years was build a great company. And then the next 3 years was scale. So for 5 years, I built like 8 salons. And in the past 3.5 years, we're now 89 units in the franchise. So there's massive scale that came then. But I had to get the economics right. And so some of the things that were off were how to pay employees. Like this was a big aha moment for me. I had two estheticians and I was looking at them and they were both paid the exact same amount and they were wildly different in performance. And I'm like, how is that possible? Well, at most companies, you get raises when you've been there for longer. But in my company, I was like, this is stupid. Like, let's make it performance-based. And so as they sell memberships, which are like our lifeblood of the company, we sell memberships that people come in on a monthly basis on. That's how you get raises at our company. And that was a big aha moment because it aligned the incentives of the employee with the desires and incentive of me, the owner, because now they want to sell memberships because they make more money as well. And that drove, like literally no joke, in like 1 month, it doubled our conversion rate to membership sales because incentives were aligned. And the second big aha moment was COVID. So when COVID hit, you can imagine we have gloves, we have sticks, we have like Cavicide, which is like 409 table spray that's like on steroids, it kills AIDS. And all of those things are medical grade and they tripled or quadrupled in price. And so I wasn't able to stay afloat at my current pricing. And I used to think that the two ways to make more money were either to do more volume or to lower your costs so that you have more of a spread of margin. But there's a third way and it's increase your prices. And so I increased my prices 18%. And then everything like went normalized and I had this 18% gain in profit. And that's when everything started to align and be okay. And that's when I could go to market to start scaling this on a national level.
So you're saying that basically at the point in time where your cost was forced to go up, instead of doing the other two options, you raised your prices accordingly. And then when things kind of equalized out over time again, you kept it that way because people had gotten used to it and you were able to keep that margin, or you increased that profit margin again.
Yeah, because as the costs went down, my margin started to like normalize into a healthy rate. Yeah. And Eric, like I was so scared when I did this. I mean, 18% is not small. You know, I went from a $39 Brazilian to now it's a $52 Brazilian, but at the time it's like 49. Like it was a huge increase in price. I got so scared. People did not even blink when it happened, which is crazy.
You made more money that month than the month prior.
Yeah. Like I actually made more revenue. I thought
Got it.
revenue would die because my sales would die because my prices were so high, but the prices remained relatively inelastic.
They didn't blink. That was part two. Part one was the performance based. When you were talking about the difference between two different employees, were you talking about how often or how frequent? Like this is before you instituted selling of the memberships through them. What was the difference there? Like the person that first tipped you off to all this said, I can do 4 in an hour. Was it that one could do like 2 or 3 and the other could do like 5 or 6? Or
No,
what was the difference there?
Like you've heard the term like building your books, like for hairstylists, you see the same people over and over again. And so that stickiness factor of an esthetician of like, how likely is it that the person that came in last month will come in again and see you next month is what we're focused on here. So one esthetician had a lot of repeat customers and the other one had almost none. Why is that? Well, she's not a good esthetician. She's not rebooking people.
So we're talking, it might have been one, they didn't ask, hey, when are you coming in next? Simple a question as that, or let's get you on the books for your next time. Also comes down to almost literally like their bedside manner, their customer service kind of approach. And it was night and day between the two is what you were saying.
Yeah. And you got to figure like you're naked on a table, right? So you don't want to see a lot of new people. Like we get bad reviews if our company is great, but we have high turnover. Like, so we have to invest in retention because if somebody's having to see a new person every time they come in, they're going to leave that salon because that salon is having a hard time keeping their employees.
Very interesting. I know that recently you had started to, within the past few months or so, started to increase your reception because you were doing things with AI. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So in 2022, I completely got rid of reception in the United States. The average turnover in the salon industry for reception is 3 months. And it's part-time workers. They're going to school typically in college and they don't have any adoption or belief. They don't bleed for the company, right? So reception is bad. Inherently, like there are a lot of things that are challenging about reception. And they also like hit into your costs massively. I mean, our minimum wage in Arizona is almost $15. So like you have a 40% staff that don't care that much about your business, that have really weird hours because they're all part-time and they're not like fully dedicated to your business. So we just like, we got to get rid of this. So what we did was we built a call center in the Philippines and Belize, 2 locations to mitigate the risk of a hurricane. And once the call center was built, we did exclusively texting because we didn't want to have like the accent. We don't want to like degrade the performance. So we did that for 2 years. We first did it for a year to test. Then we got rid of our reception. As soon as I got rid of reception Arizona, my profit margin jumped up 7%. So that was like a big aha moment. Like you don't need them. And another bad thing that was happening was we sell memberships. And when the esthetician would walk the member to the front of the room, the person in the front of the room would like kill the membership deal, right? Like they're not invested like the esthetician was. So not having a handoff means that we sold more memberships. And then finally last year, we put about 250,000 into AI tech. And so best in class, I've read a lot of white papers on this. Best in class in AI has about a 70% completely automated bot handle rate, meaning humans don't touch it. We put 5 months into work into this, like just building it. And on month 5, we turned it on and we went from a 16% handle rate to a 74% handle rate, literally overnight. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen. Overnight, we had to like reduce our staff by a third on the reception side.
Now, when you say handle rate, what do you mean by that? I think some people might be curious.
Yeah. So like, it's mainly like booking appointments or rescheduling or canceling memberships or asking questions about their service. So, I mean, a lot of it's like the same thing. Like, I'd like to book an appointment. There's only so many ways to answer that question. So once the bot can handle that, now we don't need humans for it.
So it's really like a customer service frequency kind of a rate. In other words, you're handing it off to them.
Yeah. And if you have like a smaller company, like AI is not really possible to handle that. So the interesting thing with AI is there's 2 parts to making this system work. Number 1 is you have to train the bot on intent, which means like you have to run it through a ton of scenarios where people say, I'd like to book an appointment in like a million different ways. And it needs like a lot of examples of this to have the confidence that what the person is asking is, I'd like to book an appointment. And so you have to train it to a confidence level of like 98% or above. And then at that point, you can train the model on how to respond to that. And then you do this kind of like in the back end, like, hey, if I were live, this is what I would respond to it. And you keep just giving it positive affirmations or negative affirmations until it gets it right. And what's weird about this, it's not like with a human or like with code, you could program like, hey, when they say I want to book an appointment, send them to this location link. We had the hardest time with this because you can't just tell it, send it to this link. You like create a long document and then say, hey, in this document, reference this location and this link. Because it has a mind of its own. You just hope it figures it out eventually through your prompts.
Very interesting. So I know other people are probably thinking you automated, because that's essentially what you've done. And in a lot of ways, you've automated that challenge. How does that then tie into what you were talking about earlier, where you were talking about the estheticians pushing the sales or the subscriptions, I should say? How do you see the human side of it meshing with the automated side where the human side gets credit? Or are you still doing that? Or have you changed that up too?
Memberships are sold in the room. They're not sold over text. So it's always the human that gets credit on that. But we focus a lot on retention. Our yearly goal this year is to increase the retention of our customers. So like for us to acquire a customer, it costs us about $55. And the first appointment, the average revenue is about $27 because we get promos out for the first appointment. And so like there's this like disconnect that if you can't get them in a second time, you lose money on the person that comes in the door. And so we've started looking at like all of the touch points that affect retention within the company. And we're like, okay, how do we improve this? What's our problem solving method here? And reception is one of them. Like if they have a frustrating experience with reception, the retention goes down. And so one area where it could be frustrating is like they ask the bot something and then they don't get the response that they want. And so our bot, we used to think that the right answer would be like, hey, tell them that it's a bot. Like speak to a human is one of the options. But we've learned that like the reception flow of not having to say like A, B, or C, like let them just talk through it and the AI will respond is a much better system. We get a lot higher retention rate of our customers this way. And if it ever just dies or breaks, we just quietly pass it off to reception. So responses go from like 10 to 30 seconds to maybe like 4 minutes per response on text while we pass it off to a human.
Yeah, I got it. Okay. Because the computer is much more concise and to the point, whereas the human is kind of, just face it, the human has to decipher it first and then formulate a response and then respond, whereas the AI has been pre-programmed and knows kind of the if this then that flow of it.
Correct. And, we don't want them to know, I probably shouldn't be saying this on a public podcast, but we don't want them to know that it's a bot, right? So we put delays in there. We use like a voice that's similar to like our Hello Sugar narrative voice. And we do that through those wikis. So we create the language and voice that we want in the wikis and then publish that through our AI.
Interesting. Aside from that, any other technology you have implemented or are playing with that's helped you in any area of the business?
Yeah. So the three big techs that we employ are reception-less systems. We also employ a huge amount of infrastructure into our ads and reporting of ads. So there's three things that make the company work. Number one is you get clients in the door at a cheap price. And you do that through all the social channels, like the Meta, TikTok, Twitter, and Google. And then the next part of it is, can you sell memberships? So we have really strong like education surrounding selling the memberships. And the third piece of it is, can you keep them on the membership for a long time? So like retention side of things. And each of those buckets have like massive amounts of tech and infrastructure built in. On the like, can you keep your employees happy? This is kind of like a contrarian belief. Like we don't hire managers in the salon. Most people are like, oh, like you want a manager to manage everything. But if you look at like the daily task of a manager, about 85% of those are administerial. So there's this huge inefficiency where like you only really need a manager for like 15%, which is like talking to your staff and making sure your staff are doing well. And the administerial section, 85%, should be handed off to somebody who's far cheaper to run that salon. So we find managers overseas. We find people, we're agnostic to country, but we find remote workers that are like college educated, speak perfect English, not like rooster in the background, bad accent, but like really, really strong educated people, but they live in Ethiopia where the wage just doesn't work for them. And they work great. They talk to clients on the phone. The clients don't have any issues with it because their accent's good and they sound like an American manager. And they're a fraction of the cost. We've been able to decrease our management costs in half because of this.
Shopify has already taken the cash register online, helping millions sell billions around the world. But did you know that Shopify can do the same thing at your retail store? Give your point of sale system a serious upgrade with Shopify. Shopify POS is your command center for your retail store. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify has everything you need to sell in person. With Shopify, you get a powerhouse selling partner that effortlessly unites your in-person and online sales into one source of truth. Track every sale across your business in one place and know exactly what's in stock. Connect with customers in-line and online. Shopify helps you drive store traffic with plug-and-play tools built for marketing campaigns from TikTok to Instagram and beyond. Get hardware that fits your business. Take payments by smartphone. Plus, Shopify's award-winning help is there to support your success every step of the way. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/MU, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/MU to take your retail business to the next level today. Shopify.com/MU.
More and more entrepreneurs and investors are discovering the awesome franchise opportunities that exist across a variety of industries. Franchising can simply be the better path, and interest in franchising is at an all-time high. Lucky for you, John Austenson, founder of FranBridge Consulting and a past Millionaire University guest, is here to help you explore the premier franchise opportunities today. John and his FranBridge Consulting team are part of the largest franchise brokerage in the U.S. and have vetted the market thoroughly. FranBridge is hands down the premier source for the best opportunities in the franchise world, including both active and passive opportunities. From tiny homes to youth soccer to industrial hoses to pets, senior care to mental health, and more. John has served as an Inc. 500 franchisor and is a multi-brand franchisee himself. And he does more placements than anyone else in the country. Sign up for a free consultation call with John today or get a free copy of his book, Non-Food Franchising, at franbridgeconsulting.com. That's franbridgeconsulting.com. Available in the U.S. and Canada.
Speaking of costs, jumping back to kind of the origin in the beginning, you funded 14 units in Phoenix but you had no money. How did you do that?
Yeah. So I've always had the belief of just bootstrap the crap out of it. Even if you have the money, bootstrap it, because money makes things easier, but it doesn't always make things better. You get there quicker, but quicker isn't always right. Like you've got to figure out the model. So the first year I had a client in my ads company that was a plastic surgeon, and he let me put a 1-room salon in the back of his plastic surgery office. And he figured all the women that were coming in might get plastic surgery as well. So it'd be like this like win-win. And that was how I sold it to him. And so he charged me $600. The room was already set up. I paid $1,500 to train my first esthetician. And then I built a website. It cost me $3,000 to get started. And that first year, we just operated out of a 1-roomer, figuring out the model. We tested packages and memberships and like different price points, and also the brand. We had to figure out what our brand was. And it was slow moving. And had I went the traditional route of build a big unit and fail massively at that scale, I would have been too immobile to actually get a system in place that could scale. So that was like key to my success. It's just starting really small. And then once the model was proven out, I was able to go to a bank and say, hey, can I get a loan for this? Because I've done so well at this location and I'm so profitable. My costs were so small.
Very cool. I guess the lesson that I'm hearing from you is by any means necessary, in a sense, but be strategic about that. Don't just do anything and everything. Look for the opportunities, see which ones that are there, right? I think that's what I hear you saying.
Yeah. I mean, like a big part of our franchise is this as well. It's like financial discipline and financial like discipline in areas, even if you have the money. So what we do with our franchisees is we start salon suites. They're like these 10 by 10 rooms, just like my first office in the plastic surgeon's office. And these 10 by 10 rooms are started in like salon suite boutiques. We work, but for salons, like they exist out there. So like hairstylists will go rent a room for themselves in these like salon suites. And we go do the same thing. And so a traditional salon takes $400,000 a year of your life to build, and you have no idea if it's going to work. A Hello Sugar, you can start for $60,000, and we can get it up and running in 2 or 3 months. And the typical time to profitability is only 4 to 6 months. And so it's a very easy business to start right away and to build into a successful business. And then once it's built, then you go find the flagship location. You spend a year building it, but you're making money the entire time your initial unit's being built as a flagship. So it's a cool way to like, even today, have financial discipline in the business market.
Yeah. Well, I'd have to imagine that even from the start through to now, your role has dramatically shifted. Like, talk a little bit about what your role was when first getting started, and then maybe each time you've had to make like a major pivot or shift in your own personal role and what that looked like.
I have analogies for all parts. So like in the beginning, you're a baby, you're learning to walk. You're trying to find your identity. Do you have humor? Are you somebody who's talkative? Are you quiet? And your brand has that same style. Like you've got to find out who your brand is. And in this stage, what I did was I went onto Facebook. And at the time, like Facebook was bigger than Instagram, in my opinion. And I just put like 5 different concepts out there to see what stuck. So I had like a high fashion girl. I had a girl in a bikini at the beach. I had like a homey, like girls' night out kind of concept. And then another one I did was a bigger girl. So I went and just took a screenshot of a girl in a bikini, but it was like a larger, voluptuous woman. And that concept got like 3 times the engagement of the other concepts. And one of the comments I still remember today was like, I love that you use real women. And I was like, oh, there's something here, you know? And like, I didn't know. I just tested different things. So then I was looking at all the reviews, and like all the positive reviews said, she makes me feel comfortable. So I took those 2 concepts, synergized them, and built a brand about making women feel comfortable and visualizing that through real people. And even today, when you walk in the salon, you see people of all walks of life. Like there's gay people, straight people, black to white to everything in between. We're all welcome here. And you see that in the branding of the company. So the first thing was like, how do we get the branding right? And then I'm kind of a clean person. I'm not like super clean. My wife would tell you I'm not that clean, but I feel like I'm a clean person. But if you were to come over to my house, like I'd be doing the dishes, I'd be vacuuming like in the corners and all, like I'd be like doing that next level. And that's kind of how franchising is. So when I started, I thought it was a great business, but people would come to me and be like, how do you hire? And I'm like, oh, like I don't have a protocol for this. Like I just kind of do it. Right. And so I had to figure out a protocol that I could give them. And in the process of really refining all of these concepts, my business became infinitely better. Like I would say that when I started franchising is when I started making the most money because my business became to that next level. In this time period, when you're 0 to 12 units, a lot of this is me being a CEO of managers, right? And like I felt like I had enough capacity for this to be the one in charge. You think about a mechanic who works in a shop, but also manages people. That's kind of how I was. But today I'm running a company that in Arizona alone is doing $10 million. And across the franchise, there's 89 units. There's a lot of people relying on us. And so the enterprise value of this is massive. And the amount of work that I personally can do to make a difference is like very small. And so I was actually just writing this out about what are the roles of a CEO. And the important things that I think happen for a CEO are that you are good at PR. So you're good at like sharing your brand to the world, kind of like doing podcasts, but also internal with your team. You're good at hiring the right people and aligning their strategic vision to your vision. So strategic alignment is what I call that. And if you feel like you're too busy, if you feel like you just can't get out, you're like swallowed up in the role, it's because you haven't hired effectively. You haven't figured out that side of that. And the final thing that a CEO must do well is balance a financial budget. You have to have the financial discipline to say, I know this person wants more money here, but I can't afford that. And to be able to have that tough conversation with them and say, this is what I can offer you and pay, and to have a fair way to do that. And that's where I think the top CEOs play is in those three roles: financial discipline, strategic alignment, and hiring the right people.
Speak a little bit to that hiring, because I know if you're franchising, you're almost like, oh yeah, hey, here you go. A lot of people would think, hey, someone comes to me and they want to do what I'm doing, or they want to be a franchise of my business. Great. But I think that it's probably you're doing a little bit of vetting. How does that process look to you?
Yeah. Again, analogies. Like imagine you're like a gazelle in Africa. Okay. A gazelle in Africa lives in total paranoia. A gazelle hears the wind and is like, oh crap, is that a lion? Is that a lion? Like, am I going to get eaten today? What was that? It's just the wind, like chill out, right? But the gazelle that's like, oh, don't worry about that noise. That's just the wind. That's the one that gets eaten, right? Like that's the one that's going to be eaten. And so I feel like that as a franchise selector for franchisees, like I have a lot of like keen discipline and just thought behind, am I going to hire this person? Because I'm going to be married to that person for 10 years. And so I'm very selective on the franchisees that I bring on. I can tell you one time I was in a meeting with somebody and they just started drinking a beer, like very, very accomplished. They like financially had tons of money. Like they would have been a great franchisee to bring on early on because we needed the franchisee units. But I saw him drinking a beer during this meeting and I'm like, I don't know, like that's just not my people. You know, like I don't mind if people drink, I don't care. But like during a business meeting, that's just a little weird for me, you know? And like that was enough for me to be like, no, I'm not going to do business with this person. Or another time, this guy like was ready to go, had a unit picked out, like very, very far in the process, which is like tempting to a franchisor, but his personal life was chaotic. You know, he had like a lot of weird things going on. And I'm just of the firm belief that people that have chaotic personal lives have just made choices that were poor that led them to chaos, right? Like chaos is something that's created. It's not just like you fall into chaos. So I didn't bring him on as a franchisee. So I'm like looking for the wind. And sometimes I'm going to get it wrong. I'm going to think it's a lion and it's just the wind. But I'd rather that case than the lion enter into my family and eat the rest of our team. And that's how I have to think as a franchisor, because as a franchisor, like Eric, like I have a fiduciary duty to you if you were a franchisee and to other franchisees, right? So like if you sued me or if you got sued and that affected the franchisor, that affects everybody else in the system. And that's a high vulnerability. So you want to have like top level franchisees in the system.
That makes sense. It's not necessarily a specific, like with the beer thing. It's like, you don't care. Go ahead, do that. I don't care. But right now, right here, right now, when we're in a meeting, like it's a sign. It may not be a sign or an issue to somebody else, but you already know that the vibe or the way that you work, that doesn't really fit. And you're okay with that. You're okay with calling that out. I doubt that you told that person that was an issue. I think you just probably tactfully said something along the lines of, thanks for coming in, or thanks for the meeting, or whatever type of meeting it was. Kind of just let them know overall it's not going to work out, and you give them reasons why, but that's probably not what you call it out as. That's more of an indicator than it is a reason. You probably found other reasons I bet, aside from that as well.
Yeah. I mean, he was very like aggressive in terms of like, yeah, I'm going to grow like crazy. And like, I'm just whatever. I'm just the alpha male kind of person, and it's just not my vibe or culture. Right.
Yes.
And I might've been paranoid. He might've been an incredible CEO and he might've been just postulating here, but I don't want to take the chance.
Yeah.
Not when I'm married to that person for 10 years.
Yep. And that's the point. It's like, it's okay. That's one of the things that's great about the freedom of being an entrepreneur is that freedom of choosing to work with who you want to work with. That includes customers too, also.
Yeah. Like Pareto's principle, 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your customers.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about hiring here. I would imagine that it's another whole thing altogether to keep those people. If you've got the right people, how do you support them? How do you keep them when you're at the top and you're the franchisor and you're supporting your franchisees?
Yeah, let me talk a little bit about that. So I had this interesting aha moment this last year because we had franchisees that kept their employees longer than us at corporate. I have 14 stores in Arizona, 14 salons. And so I have an HR manager. I pay exceptionally well. We give benefits. I mean, we're a big brand. Like you would think that a company like this would have an average retention that's far longer than someone who has a one-room salon, can barely pay like good wages. Like you would think that it'd be a lot better at our location. And some franchisees had double the retention than I did. So it's like, why? Like, why is that happening? And so I started diving into this, and an assumption I'm making here is that it was leadership. The leadership at these smaller salons was much better, and they felt connected to the person. But when you have 100 people under you, you can't have one-on-one connections like you can in the smaller salons. That's impossible, right? So you've got to create a different way to solve this retention problem. And when you're bigger, the first answer is throw money at it, throw money at the problem. And so I remember looking at the Navy SEALs, and the Navy SEALs had a similar issue where they weren't keeping their Navy SEALs, and they spent a ton of money on training and they were losing them to the corporate world. They're just going off to become privatized security and making like double or triple the money. And so they went back and they were like, okay, we're going to give you tons of bonuses and tons of money here to like stay as a Navy SEAL. And they're like, you idiot. Like, that's not why we joined the Corps. Like that wasn't it at all. You failed us on the culture side, and that's why we left. And so money can solve problems to some degree, but you've got to figure out the rest of it. And what we did at Hello Sugar was, and again, I'm giving away secrets, but we built a list of all of the things that an esthetician could do right to receive praise. And, our staff are 23-year-old females. They're girls, and they need a high degree of praise. And so we figured things like, sell memberships, get a review with your name in it, do something great in an educational purpose like sales, come in early and clean. Like there's like just a lot, like let's say like 50 different examples of these. And then what I did was I created bonuses or gifts associated with those things. And then I gave these to my managers and said, here, you have a budget of $50 an employee every month. So $600 a year. And I figured through calculations that I lose about $5,000 to $6,000 profit per esthetician that quits because of the retraining, the losing of clients that are loyalists, like et cetera. I lose about $6,000 profit. So $600, 10% of that is far worth it for this. And now what happens is every time that somebody does something right, they get public recognition. They get really cool gifts like t-shirts or like those like coffee mugs that say Hello Sugar on them. And they're just creating this brand and retention and creating a frequency of praise. And I read this study that said there was this company that gave poker chips to their employees, and the poker chips could be redeemed for like a gift or something. It's kind of like the idea of like tickets in like an arcade. And that created more value than the frequency of gifts. It was just like the frequency of getting something was more important than it was of like the actual prize itself. And so having a frequency system that allows praise to the esthetician increased retention. And I've been able to track this over the 5 months that I've had it. And so far, my retention has went up by about 20%. It's been very profitable for us to give more to the estheticians this way.
There's probably a study there to be done for sure, or a case study when it comes to the perceived reward value is probably a better term to go with versus the frequency of whatever gift or acknowledgement is probably what I would go with, perceived reward value and frequency of acknowledgement. Would you rather have someone say, great job over and over and over again, often, Or would you rather get one big lump sum of something? Hey, here's a gift card. Here's a this, here's a that. I think you've hit on it, though, not just for you and your business, but I think for businesses in general, there's definitely a balance there to test the waters with, and even involve some of your employees to give feedback on it as well. But I think you're finding some really interesting findings there.
Yeah. So some principles of this that have been important for us is, like you said, frequency of the gifts. And the second thing you said, probably like unconsciously, is that it's a gift. It's not earned, right? So earned compensation leads to entitlement. And so like we've had a couple estheticians come up and be like, hey, I just got an A on this. Like, where's my shirt? And I'm like, oh, no. This is a gift, and it has to feel like a gift to them. Even though in the back end, like we want to do these things, we want to give these out frequently. I don't want estheticians thinking that this is just part of their compensation. If you look at slot machines, why do slot machines work? Like fundamentally, this is financially not a good move to play the slot machine. You see people mindlessly pressing a button. And that's because there's a random side to this. The random side creates the addiction. And maybe there's a degree of retention in the salon that's similar to addiction, where if it's infrequent, but it's frequent enough, it's like rewarding and it's like a gift, it doesn't feel like earned, then you create this dopamine reaction that keeps people happy at the company.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a management science to it for sure. So
100%. Yeah.
I'm also curious, you grew from 0 to what you said, 89 now?
Yeah.
How do you do competitive advantage? How do you differentiate yourself or think about that strategically?
Yeah. I wish I could put like a map on the screen so you can see this. So we studied all of our competitors. Like, what is their call to action at their salons? So European Wax has a special wax. That's what they say. Like, yeah, we have a special wax. Radiant Waxing does speed waxing. That's their call. And a company called Sugaring NYC does sugaring as their call. And then there's another company called Waxing the City. And quite frankly, I don't know what their brand call is. Like, they're kind of just, they're confused of what it feels like. Like I looked at it, I couldn't figure it out. So those are the 4 big competitors out there. And all of these, I think, have missed the mark because they're focused on features. You've probably heard the saying, nobody wants a 2-inch drill bit. What they want is a 2-inch hole. And so the bit gets you the hole. And that's the difference between a feature and a benefit. People want the hole, not the drill bit. And so when you say something like, why do you have a special wax? Because this wax is going to hurt less than others. Why do you do sugaring over waxing? Because sugaring hurts less than wax. Why do you speed wax? Because you get it done faster. And getting it done faster means it's going to hurt less. And so these guys have really cornered feature markets. And we went in and said, no, let's be a benefit-driven company. So on every piece of material that we have, you're going to see hello sugar. It hurts less here. That's our call to action. It hurts less here. And we do that by finding the right product for your skin, whether that be sugaring or waxing. We have a hybrid model. Or we like have this 50 pain management certification that our estheticians go through that help with like breathing techniques and putting pressure at the right time. A lot of different things that can reduce the pain for the final client. And that just goes back to benefit-driven marketing instead of feature-driven marketing. And that's how we corner like our position in the market. And you'll see people like, they'll come in and they'll be like, oh yeah, it really does hurt less here. That's a cool stickiness factor that increases retention.
Yeah. I love that you're using the word stickiness because it's literal and figurative in this instance.
100%. Yeah.
Well, Brigham, it's been awesome talking with you. And I'm sure there's a lot more that people can do to find out more about you and Hello Sugar and all of that. Shoot us some places where we can go and connect with you and the company.
Yeah. If you'd like to learn more about Hello Sugar and franchising, we can get a salon up and running in 2 to 3 months. According to our FDD, which is like the audited financials, a typical salon can make 60 to 80,000 a year in profit. And it's about 60,000 to get started. And then when you turn that to a flagship, which is like the bigger 1,200 square foot anchored on a grocery store type salons, those can do 150 to 250,000 profit, averaging being in the 150 to 200,000 range. Yeah. So like our model's great. I think it works really well. It's a good starter business for people looking to get into franchising or into entrepreneurship. And you can find us just by Googling Hello Sugar franchising.
Very cool. All right. Well, Brigham Dallas, it's been awesome talking with you. Thank you so much for sharing your journey and your experience and your wisdom.
Thanks a lot. Well, I appreciate being on your show, Eric. You're an amazing host.
Whew, that was another great conversation. I am so glad we got to share this conversation with you, with Brigham Dallas. He just brought it, right? He shared this vault of wisdom that he has in terms of disrupting that salon industry with Hello Sugar and creating a culture of inclusiveness and employee satisfaction, not just creating a great culture for his workers and employees, but for also the customers. It's just a story of how you innovate, how you change up your approach to leadership, having a great impact on the company's growth and morale. And again, remember, one of the biggest lessons here is just have simple conversations that lead to innovations that change the way you think about a product or a service or a brand. So as you're out there dreaming it up and stepping forward and moving forward, have vision, but also have conversations with those around you, those that are doing it with you, those that are in it with you, because you never know where that next idea is going to come from. All right, that's it for now. Until next time, class dismissed.